Among all of the new pixel art style quick-paced combat games out there, developing studio Heart Machine is out to bring their already huge success Hyperlight Drifter to the Nintendo Switch. Being someone who has never played this title before, I'm curious to see what it's all about and if I'm going to enjoy it as much as the masses thinks I will. I've had some experience with games like this before, but when starting up Hyperlight Drifter, I get a much different feeling. The music is ambient, and the visuals are otherworldly with a distinct cybertech feeling. I'm glad to see the settings menu is full of parameters I can tweak, and with multiple difficulties and New Game Plus options, it proves promising to provide quite a number of hours played. Hopping in, the game is inherently beautiful, and that's with recalling that the market being so full of 8 or 16-bit style games right now. With pixel art, it's easy to see all of the design in the image, so everything has to be carefully placed exactly where they want it. Everything looks handcrafted and meant to be there. These giant overgrown structures are what constantly catch my eye, and I feel that each one is giving me a glimpse into a past that I haven't yet discovered. Plus, the animations are so smooth on certain points. My favorite animation is when you pull one of the triangle pieces out of the ground. I also have to say that I definitely have a sweet spot for pixel art creatures. This is a game where from the very beginning the focus is on the story. You are thrown into these images of horrible things happening, your character being held back by some dark force, and this diamond-shaped object. What is this virus that seems to be killing me? Why is all of this happening? What is my past? And who are these giant beings that I have seen? The lack of vocal speech adds to this atmosphere of discovery. You are shown pictures of what you need to do or where you need to go. It's impactful. There are sections where conflict is staged and decay is noticed in the abandoned machines with plant life growing on it. But there are also sections with life, with peace, and it makes you feel that there is no danger. When I approached that first cliff and looked upon this vast landscape and a metropolis in the distance, I knew that it was going to be a long journey. And I knew that my goal was in sight, but that getting there will be full of hardship and lessons. And going from there, I was thrust into choices of where to go next with my trusty sidekick, the tiny elephant machine fairy. The nature of this game allows you to roam just about anywhere. Of course, there are sections you have to unlock, but after seeing my first potential objective on the map, I ended up straying far away from it without even thinking about it. I was just exploring. But then I got back on track and headed towards what I thought was my first boss fight. Spread along the way are various purple triangle pieces to collect that will add itself to that pad you've seen in the very beginning. Groups of enemies can be guarding them, or you can find them while exploring. Also, you use these pieces to unlock more areas to progress further into the game. You can also find pieces of what look like gold computing chips to purchase upgrades from local shops. Along the journey, you could come in contact with other citizens of the surrounding landscape. They each have their own stories, and this is a welcoming touch that does well to breathe life into what is otherwise a desolate, deadly landscape. Warping is also a nice concept, so you won't be spending too much time doing nothing but traveling back and forth to locations you want to explore again. Something I noticed while playing through is that while other games like to portray difficulty by not giving you a clear idea of what to do next, Hyperlight Drifter has a clever but simple way of leading you to your next destination. I noticed that times where I was wondering what to do next, I could see a nearby hint to give me that aha moment. It could be a switch on a higher ledge to lower the wall blocking my way, or some other variation. This reminds me of games from years ago that didn't make it too difficult to keep moving, but didn't exactly give away the answers either. My initial thoughts of the combat were pretty good. The feeling of dashing around to slice apart enemies has always been fun in my book. It's also a nice touch that your pistol only recharges when you attack enemies with your sword. This ensures that the combat will feature a balance of both melee and ranged combat. Add that with the ability to buy different fighting skills, and combat gets much more dynamic as time goes on. Attacks feel like they have impact, and there is real danger from the enemies as well. Your health can drain just as fast as you can destroy enemies. That being said, death isn't as bad as other titles you may be used to. There's no crawling back through 10 minutes of respawned enemies, and there isn't even a title that comes up saying you died. You just wait until your character comes back to consciousness a short distance away and get back to it. I'm actually really glad that they did this because it does a good job of not breaking my immersion. Coming from playing many hours of Wizard of Legend, the dash felt a little clunky at first, and I had to get used to the directional sensitivity. But dashing across gaps onto small platforms was so incredibly easy, because your character will stop once it finds that ground to connect with. It's simple quality of life development choices like this that keep me immersed into a game without being frustrated with how I would move if I were in the game. The boss fights are a main staple in this title. It was good to see that they had variety and different tactics to kill effectively, but I do think that it felt a bit too easy. Out of my first 2 bosses, I think I only died once or twice. After slaying said evil monster, you go on to activate these giant pillars that have some sort of effect to the pad you find in the beginning. What about audio? If Desolation and Cybernetic Creatures is on your top playlist, then you'll love all of the sound effects and music. And really, the music does a great job of making you feel like you are mostly alone in a hopeless electronic wasteland. The sounds of the monsters and attacks don't sound like what you would typically think, but it has that very slight glitchy vibe to it, which I think fits the atmosphere and totally works. Now, I'm a seriously big fan of atmospheric music, and this makes me want to go get my hands on the soundtrack pressed on vinyl. And since we are on the Switch, how's the handheld mode? I had a great time playing handheld, and didn't notice any difference in frame rate. Controls are the same, it still looks gorgeous, and details aren't lost on the smaller screen. Simply put, it works. Now, I didn't have a chance to play the co-op, but after checking out some of the gameplay, it looks to be almost exactly like the single-player experience, just with another person on the screen. That being said, it would probably end up being a bit easier since I didn't notice any of the health bars being increased. What it comes down to is that you aren't just playing this game because of the dash combat. You're playing because you've been thrust into this world of unknown, with the only feeling being that you must find out what's going on and how to fix it, before this virus within you destroys you. With maps full of hidden areas to discover as you progress, and a loaded achievement system, there's going to be a lot of time to sink into Hyperlight Drifter. The game itself isn't easy, but I didn't find it to be hard either. After defeating the first 2 bosses and doing some minor side collecting, I sunk about 3 to 4 hours into the game. If you're just going to play through it once without trying very hard to collect much, you'll probably hit around the $2 per hour mark. Whereas, if you spend the time to collect items, hunt achievements, and beat the New Game Plus, there is no doubt that you should go even lower than the $1 per hour mark. So is it worth the $20 to buy Hyperlight Drifter for the Switch? If you're wanting a game for the story, absolutely. It's very refreshing to have a title focus on story so much more than anything else. Now, if you're wanting it solely for the combat and boss fights, I don't think it's difficult enough to buy just for that reason. I would at least wait for a sale to pick it up. For me, this was a no-brainer to purchase it. The fast combat and being able to dive deep into a new story is just too good. And that wraps it up. Be sure to like this video if it helped you out, and subscribe to see my thoughts on upcoming titles. You can check out my social media by clicking on the links in the description below and see what other games I have in mind for reviews to come even before a video is released.